What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode of our F9F-8P Photo Cougar. I know usually we'd go ahead and upload something on the D520 for Ben Builds with Joe, but instead we're going to be focusing on the Cougar because it's coming due in a couple of weeks. We got to get this thing done. Now today I want to go ahead and focus on installing the landing gears and the gear bay doors, get some of the little details on like the vents and the tail skid, go ahead and clear up some of these seams. Well, we'll just see how we go, and I'm hoping to get to priming by the end of the episode. So that is my goal. Basically, the kit is coming along. It's not great. There's issues with fit, there's issues with seams, but I've done my best I can possibly do, and I'm just happy that we've been able to get this as far as we have. But we still have a lot more to go, so I think we'll just jump right into a time lapse. I want to go ahead and fix up some of the wing joints. I need to go ahead and sand those down and get them all cleaned up. Then I want to go ahead and start installing the landing gears and the doors, as well as doing a bunch of sanding, making sure that all of that looks awesome. So let's go ahead and get into that first time lapse, guys. Push forward. We got a lot to do today. Let's get it done. All right, everybody, we are back, and so far so good, guys. We have all the landing gears nicely installed. The extension that I put in for the front gear I think is much better than what it was before, so I'm happy with that. I'm going ahead and just installing a little bit of a scissor link right here using some sliced pieces of styrene. Just something tiny to go ahead and give it some extra interest. Won't be perfect, but it looks good enough for me. I'm happy with it. So let's go ahead and just tack that in, one step closer to getting this thing primed. Now we're also going to go ahead and put on the wing fences. Now the early Cougars had leading edge slats, much like the FJ2 Fury, but the F9F-8, they went ahead and fixed the front leading edge of the wing and they added in a wing fence. Now the wing fences are actually photo etch, and I am okay with photo etch in this instance. Sometimes you get photo etch that you just don't really want to fool with because either it's too small, you lose it, or you're never going to be able to see it. But for wing fences, that's something that I really do think photo etch is excellent at reproducing because it's thin, it just looks the part, it fits the scale, and I'm really pleased with how these are turning out. That's one thing with wing fences. I think photo etch replacements are a pretty good idea. Otherwise, plastic just ends up being too thick. Because this is a Kitty Hawk kit, we do have to be extra careful with how these go on to the wing. I had to use a micro saw to go ahead and cut a little bit more of an indentation on both of these ends so I could take my hobby knife, clean out some of the extra plastic, then I can go ahead and fit that wing fence right into place. Now the way I did this is I actually took the bottom part of the wing fence, angled it in and down, just to make sure that I can go ahead and slip it right into that slot, and once it is in place, I can tack it in with some glue, and we're good to go. Now as you can see here, we have the aircraft pretty much all together. We've got the wing fences on, went ahead and put the landing gears on, the doors, the tail skid. I have not put the arrestor hook on, but that's okay, we'll get to that later. We've got the nose attached. Of course, we have our refueling probe, though it's not glued in. It is installed, at least for now. We did put our hard points there for the drop tank, so I probably won't be adding in the tanks. I've seen lots of references that don't show that, so I think we'll be okay with that. And now we're going to go ahead and move on with the canopy. Now the windscreen seems to be okay. I'm not really that pleased on how it fits, but it's better than it was. Still need to do a little bit of work on that. The real major part though is actually the rear sliding portion of the canopy. That just doesn't work very well. I have here the masked off version of the canopy we're going to be using. And luckily, I'm going to be opening this, but if you wanted to go ahead and put this into the closed position, right now, it interferes with the seat. So I actually can't get it any farther than right about here when it starts to go ahead and just lift up the back of the canopy. Now, I had originally planned to go ahead and tack this in and then use it as somewhat of a mask, so I'm not going to paint up the inside of my cockpit, but that's not going to work because I can't get it to fit. Also, one of the issues I do have with this canopy is that we don't have any decking there on the very back of it. Now, if I go ahead and I refer over to my white metal part out of my Collect Air resin kit, if we line them up just right, we should be able to see a little bit of some structure right back here in the very rear of the canopy. And of course, the Kitty Hawk kit does not have this. So I think that's time for a trip to the spares box. Now, rifling through all of my spare plastic, I ended up coming across this. Now, this is actually two parts of an old Heller F-84F Thunderstreak fuselage. Raised panel lines, I'm not going to use it for anything, but I've kept it all these years, and I think I finally found a use for at least a part of it. Right up here in the very front of the canopy, we have this coping. Now, this isn't necessarily the correct shape, but, to be honest, there's very little on this kit that I'm extremely impressed about, so I think, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this front coping because if you notice, it is very similar to the same width as we have in the white metal part. So I'm thinking that would be a great idea to go ahead and just cut out each of those pieces, glue them together, do a little bit of scratch building, and then glue that to the bottom of the canopy so you can see something in there when the canopy is slid all the way open. May not be 100% accurate, but I think it's going to be good enough. So now with our part nicely cut out of our fuselage, we're going to go ahead and just use some extra thin Tamiya cement. I'm going to glue those pieces together. Once those are nicely set up, we're going to have to go ahead and blank off the front of it because it is actually open right now. So we'll blank that off. We'll add a few more strips of styrene here and there to give it a bit of 3D texture, and then I think we're going to go ahead and just paint it up and see what happens. Overall, in my opinion, it's just a better choice to add something there because there's nothing there in the kit, and it's pretty prominent on the real aircraft. Now, while that is drying off camera, we're going to go ahead and take our clear parts and we're going to overcoat them in a flat black. That's going to go ahead and take care of the inside color of the canopy. We'll also have to go ahead and do a little bit of painting on the front coping for the windscreen, but I think that shouldn't be all that difficult to do. I've masked everything up, so all we have to do is just apply some paint and we're good to go. Now back over to our rear decking there on our canopy. It is pretty much dry, and I think that's going to be super easy to do. We're just going to apply a little bit of, to me, extra thin. We're going to glue this down to a strip of styrene, and then we're going to go ahead and just let that dry, come back a little bit later, add some extra details, and we'll be good to go. So that shouldn't be all that bad, and I think it's going to add quite a bit of interest to the actual model. Now the black color we went ahead and airbrushed is all nicely dried, so let's go ahead and grab a little bit of dark gray, and we're going to go ahead and do some dry brushing. I want to go ahead and dry brush over the front of the coping there on the top of the cockpit, so the viewfinder, all the little details and dials, and the edges of the coping. I want to go ahead and dry brush that, and once this is dry, I think we'll be just pretty much done with this front area. We can glue on that windscreen. Now let's go ahead and grab that windscreen and glue it down. And this is one issue that I'm going to be having probably with a lot of this canopy area. It just doesn't fit. Like nothing just quite lines up. And that's really frustrating because this is going to be fairly prominent. And even though I spent a good deal of time last episode shaving down different areas and trying to get this to fit perfectly, I can't get it any better than this. So that's unfortunate. We're going to have to use a little bit of super glue to make sure this doesn't go anywhere and just hope for the best. Now that that is nicely glued down, we're going to go ahead and start sanding down the very tip of it. One of the issues is the actual windscreen sits too far forward, so there's a little bit of a step. So I think what we can do is just kind of sand off the canopy and meld everything together. At least that's my plan. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is the only option we have. Plus, since I had to use super glue, I could unmask this later on and it could be all completely fogged. And I'm going to have to go ahead and rip out this windscreen and put on the extra one because luckily we do have another set of canopies if these end up failing. So now let's go ahead and jump back into a time lapse and let's push forward on all the details and let's go ahead and get some primer applied down to the aircraft. It shouldn't be all that difficult and most of the extra vents, gears, and doors are all glued onto the model, so I think we're in good position to go ahead and lay down a nice coat of Stynylrez gray primer. We'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and dive back into that time lapse, push forward, get everything detailed up, and go ahead and get this thing primed. Fingers crossed, we are on the right track. Let's do it, guys. All right, everybody, we are back, and as you can see, our F9F-8P Photo Cougar is all nicely primed. I went ahead and used gray Stynylrez primer. I absolutely love that stuff, and it worked beautifully here in this application. I am noticing a couple of seams here and there that might need a little bit of extra work, but for the most part, I think I'm happy with the way this is turning out. We do have one seam that's pretty noticeable on the front nose. We have to take care of that, and of course, who knows how that windscreen is going to turn out. That might be a total mess. We won't really know till we actually start unmasking, but I don't want to unmask anything yet until after I go ahead and start painting on the top colors. So we're going to have to just wait, and fingers crossed it's not completely destroyed. As you can see, though, we do have all of our parts and pieces on. We've got our landing gears, our actuators, we've got our doors, we even have our hard points, our wing fences, all the little vents and whatnot. That's all nicely attached and primed, so I'm happy with that. While we had the primer in the airbrush, we also went ahead and airbrushed not only the front photo door, so that's all set to go. We also did the back decking there for the canopy itself, and the wheels. I am very happy with how this is turning out, even though this kit is really starting to annoy me. At least we're getting close to finishing it. So until our next episode, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We're going to really push it here on the F9F-8. I want to get this thing finished up by the deadline. So until our next episode, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on episode number 11 for the Recon Group Build and the F9F-8P Photo Cougar. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.